What's up, One Mac Nostalgia? Dave here with another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Catching up because I was away. As a result, I'm talking about 4 K-pop albums. A lot happened. ITZY, Kiss of Life, ILLIT, and Aespa. Also 2 significant movies to discuss. We Live in Time, starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, and The Apprentice, starring Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong. And I also saw Vince Staples live in concert. I'm going to talk about that. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist linked below. Let me know it's good. Let's get into it. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Vince Staples' Black in America concert tour. I saw day 2 of this tour in Boston at the Roadrunner venue, and I've been a big fan of Vince for a long time. Vince actually made a joke during the show asking if there are any day one Vince Staples fans. A lot of people cheered, and he remarked, "I'm not sure I believe you," which I thought was really funny because it's totally true. I started listening to Vince Staples over 10 years ago, back in 2013, because Mac Miller's affiliation with him put me on to Vince. Remember the Stolen Youth mixtape produced by Mac, the Shine, Cold Chain, mixtapes at that time. That's when I started listening to him. So I was ready for the Def Jam debut EP, Hell Can Wait. I heard that when it came out in 2014 and been on the ride ever since. And of course, Vince has become a very successful rapper, one of those significant, hip hop figures on the West Coast over the last 10 years, obviously. Also becoming a fun cultural figure due to his just general charisma and humor, with his Netflix show and presence in film and whatnot as well. And I'd actually seen Vince perform at his last headlining tour back in early 2019. He hasn't headlined his own tour since then. 5.5 years. It's crazy it's been that long already. And since then, of course, a lot of projects have come out, and he made a point of that during the course of the show that he has not toured his last 3 albums, right? The Vince Staples self-titled album, Ramona Park Broke My Heart, this year's Dark Times. And as a result, it was a show that very much kind of went back and forth across the various eras of his musical discography. I enjoy Vince as a performer. He is pretty capable and energetic on the mic, really doing the whole verse for the most part. He does have a backtrack pretty consistently, but the mix was pretty strong. I think at times Vince's vocal delivery, given that he's a bit of a nasally guy, at times it's perhaps a bit muddled or muffled, and the mic and the backdraft can overpower him a little bit, but he's certainly not rapping the song or anything. He's doing all his songs. And at this point, 10 plus years into his career, he's got a lot of good songs to play. It was awesome to hear track 2, Be Blue Suede, off Hell Can Wait, and to hear a lot of people in the crowd react to it positively. I saw Vince on a Sunday night. No one casually goes to a Vince Staples show, on a school night, to say the least. So it was just cool to be in the room with a lot of people knowing some of the deep cuts. And people knew the deep cuts. People knew the words. He did Yeah Right early in the set. He did North right after it as well. I think 2 of his big hits, North in particular, probably his most commercial and most mainstream song he's ever released. That used to be one of the closers during his sets. I think it's pretty cool that he did it early on. Reminds me of when I saw Schoolboy Q earlier this year, and he did Man of the Year at the beginning of the set as well. He did Fun, which is great. Big Fish bit was a big hit. I enjoyed that one. He does a lot of songs that aren't super big, right? He does stuff like Sundown Town, Law of Averages. He does some rapidy rap songs for sure. I think for me, my favorite sequence in the course of the performance was when he got to Ramona Park Broke My Heart, and he went through 4 the big bangers on that, all in a row. He did Magic, Paper Cuts, Lemonade, and Rose Street. Of course, 2 of those produced by DJ Mustard. Unsurprisingly, they're bouncy. They hit. People were definitely moving and enjoying it during that section. Little Homies off the new album hit really well. And the closer, which I was really excited to hear this be the closer, was Etouffee off the new album, because that to me was clearly the highlight on Dark Times and one of his best songs ever. I think that the triumphant, grabbing nature of that chorus on that song immediately grabbed me when I first heard it. And, it's fun to hear him do it live. It feels different, it didn't quite hit the way I was expecting. I think because maybe that the crowd wasn't like super knowledgeable of the words with the chorus. So like I was hoping that was going to be like a bit more hype than it ended up being, but Vince was performing it really well. It's deservingly the closer. So yeah, shout out Vince Staples. My second time seeing him. Black in America tour. He's great. People know that at this point. Of course, check out my Vince Staples album reviews. If you missed them, the last, 5, 6 albums we review on the channel, so check those out. Let me know if you've seen them live, what do you think? And for more music reviews, concert reviews, rap reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with ITZY's 9th EP, Gold. This is ITZY's second release of the year following Born to Be, and Gold includes all the Born to Be songs re-recorded featuring 5th ITZY member Leah, who has rejoined the group after a 10-month hiatus to focus on her health. So in reality, ITZY's Gold is 6 brand new songs. Unfortunately, ITZY's 9th EP, Gold, is a big miss. I'm really disappointed in this release, and unfortunately, I think it's just hard to have confidence in ITZY's releases project by project. There's just no consistency with this group. I think they're sonically all over the place, sometimes in a good way. I think they had some highlights earlier this year. They had some highlights last year, but there's never anything cohesive and consistent about this group. And it's hard to continue to be excited about their output given the deluge of competition they now face. More and more K-pop groups continue to debut that are popular, critically interesting, or both. And ITZY is, I think, in real danger of being left behind. At this point, too, I'm starting to worry about what the future even holds for this group. They have less than 3 years left on the original contract with JYP, and NMIX has already debuted out from under them as well. It's just really hard for me to grasp, what is the ITZY project these days? And that's, again, hard for me to say because I am a big fan of the best of their work. Ultimately, the tracks on Gold are bland for the most part, just really don't grab you. I think there's weak choruses, uninteresting verses. Sometimes the beats don't do anything for me. Sometimes the beats are all over the place and it's complete Frankenstein of a song. More than anything, though, I think the back and forth scattershot nature of their output and its quality and its direction is what's most disappointing to me. Going through the tracks, title track Gold has these big guitar chords, the drums hit really hard in the start, these playful verses, you hear the Leah presence right away, and it's like, okay, this is at best, at minimum, it's weird, it's off trend, which can be interesting, and the chorus is really just okay. It's kind of a mismatch of vocals. I don't love the mix on it. It's just a song that doesn't really come together to me. Track 2, Imaginary Friends. The song is pretty sleepy for the most part. I enjoyed some of the Rujin vocals. They're a bit livelier and the guitar kicking in halfway through, but it's not a song that leaves much of an impression. Track 3, Bad Girls Are Us. This is just like a weaker version of a song they've made before. The hook is decent, but again, it doesn't really stick in your ear at all. Supernatural, I found pretty dull, honestly. I think the best song on here would be track 5, the lyrical sentiment about all the members of the group, easy to latch onto. The chorus is pretty lively. I think Rujin has another pretty energetic verse that's nice to latch onto with that. And then the last track, Vey, features Changbin of Stray Kids, of course their JYP label mate, and this has this big bombastic beat, but I think the vocal performance is pretty staid for the most part, and the I'm walking my Vey line is just super boring and repetitive, and it has a really fun outro, honestly, and I think I needed more of that kind of energy on this project. And yeah, obviously I think most ITZY fans are not expecting them to drop a new Wannabe, but on the other hand, it's like you keep latching on to that era of the group, that type of music, but it just feels like since they've kind of left the traditional girl crush style of K-pop music making, I don't say behind, but they're just less interested in that convention. It's just been a lot of stuff thrown at the wall. Think of songs like Cake, for example. And on the other hand, sometimes things do really work. I thought Untouchable earlier this year was one of their best highlights in the last few years, but it's just the lack of consistency, the lack of quality output is frustrating. There's a song or two or moments on a few songs each project, and that's all I can really grasp. And that's just not good enough with how competitive and strong their competition is right now. Let me know, though, are you disappointed in ITZY's Gold like me? Did you like it more? Either way, let me know why. For more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Kiss of Life's third EP, Lose Yourself. Kiss of Life, massive breakout this year, kind of coming out of nowhere off one of the smaller K-pop labels, S2 Entertainment. Kiss of Life is now one of the hottest and most in-demand K-pop groups we have right now, and it's really exciting because the music has been great this far. Four-member group, Natty notably was on competition shows, almost became a member of Twice and Promise 9, Julie, previously a Black Label trainee, Belle, previously a K-pop songwriter, has written for LE SSERAFIM and others. Hanil concludes the foursome, and yeah, I just really was not expecting this coming into the year. Their song Midas Touch got this going earlier in the year. Sonically bold, vocally strong, just a big breakthrough moment. And then they kind of continued that momentum with the summer single Sticky, which became one of the biggest K-pop songs of the summer. Was it a quieter summer for K-pop hits? I think so, but Sticky definitely stuck around. And in such a short time, Natty was featured on the J Park album, Julie on the latest Nyan album, big looks for both of them. And we come to the moment where can Kiss of Life continue the momentum? Notably, Sticky was not included on this new EP, which I think expressed a lot of confidence. And I'm happy to say that Kiss of Life's third EP, Lose Yourself, is fantastic. 7 songs, and they're all great. Kiss of Life is continuing the out-of-nowhere momentum that blew up for them earlier this year. The music is interesting, often throwback in nature, but notably is very vocally strong. This group makes bangers, and they do it with sticky melodies, catchy hooks, fun hip-hop from time to time. How Kiss of Life has gone in 2024, it's very hard to be critical, and now just really exciting that they've become one of the most significant non-Big Four K-pop groups. Lose Yourself is littered with bangers. I think track 1, Get Loud, is a highlight for sure. Kind of a 2000s R&B, up-tempo, fun bass, nice kick drums. Love the vocal breakdown. The chorus is very strong. Outro is very strong. The rapping stands out. The biggest highlight for me has to be Igloo, which they're already doing fun choreography for. I think that song is a complete banger. It is sleek. They're all crushing with the verses. They trade off on the chorus. It sounds so good. Julie with the intro. Verse 2 with the rapping, it's just a complete banger. Track 2, REM, slows it down a lot, following Get Loud, kind of like more of like a snapping, to the beat. I think the Belle verse 2 vocal performance really stands out, and Julie's bridge is quite fun. Track 3, Chemistry, I love the drum tempo on this. I think the vocals are just fine. They don't jump out as much as some of the other songs, but it's still a really smooth track. Track 5, Too Many Alex. I think this is another fun highlight as well. Big banger. There's some early rapping building into, I think, a really catchy pre-chorus. And then the chorus itself is very throwback in nature with these big vocals and these horns. Fun lyrical sentiment as well. Back to Me stood out to me because it has this big, heavily produced chorus, something I would usually not expect to work as well as this song actually does. And the guitar line kind of comes out of nowhere but works and flows nicely. The last track, Not One But Us, also kind of grabbed me unexpectedly. The chorus was very reminiscent of a Clean Bandit or a Kygo song. That's not usually a compliment, but it makes sense because when the beat drops, it's not overdone. It's basically a simple rhythm, and it's, I think, a fun maximalist song. I think Julie's rap verse is excellent. Kiss of Life is clearly a group with a lot of momentum, a group that's getting better and better. Obviously, they're getting a lot more famous rapidly, and it's just awesome. I think, apart from, G-Idol or Dreamcatcher, Zero Base One, there's only so many groups that are really significant outside that Big Four group. Obviously, there's tons of groups with fans and success, but this is big, high-profile success that was not expected, and that's exciting because I think it's really well deserved. But let me know, what did you think of Kiss of Life's Lose Yourself? Do you agree it's their best work yet? Let me know what your favorite song was, and for more music reviews, more K-pop reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of ILLIT's second EP, I'll Like You. ILLIT, of course, debuted earlier this year. at High, specifically under the B-Lift sub-label. We're in Hype and Call Home, and ILLIT, I think despite not a lot of fanfare, really broke out instantaneously with that first drop. Specifically, the song Magnetic, their debut single, became the first K-pop act debut song to debut on the Billboard Hot 100, and now has over 430 million streams on Spotify. It's one of the biggest K-pop songs of the year, and by the metrics, the most successful debut K-pop song ever in the Western market anyway. The success of Magnetic, as well as the other single Lucky Girl Syndrome, I think immediately brought a lot of attention to ILLIT, but of course that music also received some negative attention, specifically for its similarities to another group at Hybe, namely New Jeans, a group I've talked about quite a bit. And I think the lightness, the airiness, the moody vibe nature of the sentiment of the Sonics with ILLIT is very similar to New Jeans. It is what it is. And of course, ILLIT has come into the crossfire of the Hybe, New Jeans war of words with, Min Hee Jin of New Jeans and Adore calling out ILLIT and B-Lift Lab for, creative plagiarism. It's certainly been a messy few months for a group that just came to be, and of course, however you feel about that situation, we can leave the members of ILLIT specifically out of it, and I think just focus on the music. And, I wasn't the biggest fan of that first project, Super Real Me, where Magnetic lives, and I just didn't think there was enough to the music. There wasn't just enough texture, enough to really latch onto and grasp. So it didn't grab me by any means. But given their success and given their Hybe affiliation, I was just curious to see what would happen, what would continue. ILLIT's second EP, I'll Like You, is a step up from their debut Super Real Me. I think this music is a lot more interesting. Vocally, there's a bit more variety with the production. In general, these songs have a lot more structure and a lot more under the hood with them. And as a result, the music is just a lot more interesting. Title track, I'll Like You. Love the bass, very dancey. It's a lot more energetic than really any of their past songs, but unfortunately the hook is very repetitive and dull. Unlike the Magnetic hook, it just doesn't quite work nearly as well this time around. However, I did enjoy the chant outro. So overall, I think that's a song that, even if it doesn't totally work for me, I think it is a lot more engaging than some of their past work. Track 2, Cherish My Love. I think the drums very nice on that. The vocals pop a bit more again. ILLIT vocals to this point have not popped all that much by design. If you know, you know. Another repetitive hook. I don't know why the writing is so lackluster when it comes to these hooks. Kind of a rap verse with verse 2, which I was not expecting. I think actually worked pretty well. Track 4, Pimple, has this nice guitar line. Definitely the smoothest song of the bunch. Probably the most reminiscent of the first EP. And then the last song, Tic Tac, very upbeat, quite catchy, and I think this is a song with a lot of potential, honestly, to be a big grower, I think, for fans of the group. So overall, I think I'll Like You is definitely a step forward for ILLIT. That much is pretty obvious, and I think they did enough on this project to dissuade a lot of the New Jeans comparisons. It's certainly not nearly as overt now as the group has, I think, definitely branched off a bit from that foundation. And, young group finding the sound. Obviously, the label very much involved creatively with how this is going. It's very good that this album didn't give us New Jack Swing like the newest New Jeans songs did. I think it's very intentional that this is a bit different, and it's for the best ultimately. Would I consider myself a big ILLIT fan now? No, I would not. But I am more curious in seeing what journey they continue to go down as they release more music. I mean, again, to this point, that gives us, 11 songs they've released, 5 new ones here, 4 new ones before, so they only have 10 songs to their name, officially, so we have a long way to go. But let me know, what did you think of ILLIT's second EP, Like You? Did you think it was a step in the right direction and a step forward creatively, like me? Let me know, and for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Aespa's 5th mini album, Whiplash. Aespa back again after dropping their first full-length album, Armageddon, earlier this year. An album I liked quite a bit for its quirkiness, and to me was clearly the strongest, most compelling Aespa release to this point. Of course, Aespa being on SM Entertainment, we know the vocal strength, the vocal chops are there. And musically, they finally, to me, have really come into their own and established a firm identity of what they can do. And that was buoyed further by the Japanese single they released following Armageddon, Hot Mess, which I absolutely love. I think that song is incredible. Aespa's fifth mini album, Whiplash, confirms that 2024 is Aespa's best year to date. Coming off the strength of Armageddon, the Hot Mess single, now Whiplash, this group is humming on all cylinders. I think they're making very compelling music, some of the strongest K-pop we have right now. It's never been a question of talent when it comes to this group, but really more about the musical conception and execution of it. I think with Whiplash, this positive momentum is continuing. Only 6 songs, I like all of them. It's quite fun to go back to the electro production that colored in a lot of the early Aespa music, but now it's done in a much more interesting way. You have, I think, very well-constructed songs. The vocal performances are very consistent. The songs are largely quite up-tempo, but even when the hooks are a bit simpler, the beat picks up all the slack. Whiplash, Kill It, Pink Hoodie, I think these are all highlights, and some of my favorite Aespa songs already. Title track, Whiplash, electro beat, super up-tempo. Then when the beat drops, the beat gets even crazier. The hook is very simple, but I think it really works because, again, that beat just really keeps you moving. And the verses, I think, are fun. I think the Aespa members are really gliding along those. And I think this year I've really come to appreciate Ning Ning specifically out of Aespa. I think she's been a bit unheralded, in the shadow of Karina and Winter's strong popularity. But I think she's incredibly capable and important when it comes to this group's, vocals working. Track 2, Kill It. I think this is really fun. I love the Karina chorus, very similar to Whiplash, but I think this is, very much title track worthy, you could say. It's a very strong song. Flight's Not Feelings, this is a subtler song, really just some light drums, more reserved singing, but hook in particular is still very smooth. Pink Hoodie, you have like the Ayo vocal tick on the hook once again, reminiscent of Armageddon. More rap on this, but I think what really shines with this song is the vocal harmonies on the outro, because we know how strong of singer everyone in Aespa is, and it's really fun when you hear them really layer on top of each other and just kind of close out a song in that manner. I think Flowers was solid as well, and then the last song, Just Another Girl, for the first time, some acoustic guitar to end this album, and a strong chorus once again. I think this album, Whiplash, it's a lot more cohesive, even if that guitar pops in at the end. It's a lot more cohesive than, say, Armageddon was, where Armageddon had a lot more risk-taking and, genre experimentations, which was fun, and it was weirder as a result. And I think the combination of that album and now Whiplash really, to me, has crystallized that Aespa sound has been found, it's been honed, and the strengths of these 4 women's, vocal capability is now being, realized. And that's really exciting because they've been a popular group since they came into existence. That goes without saying, but I think now the music is finally matching that hype, and that's what we want to see because that's what's most important. But let me know, what did you think about Aespa's 5th mini album, Whiplash? What did you like most about it? And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Apprentice, starring Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong, from Iranian director Ali Abbasi. This is the Donald Trump biopic film that has received much fanfare and notoriety, to say the least. Of course, premiering back at Cannes earlier this year, then struggling to find distribution due to its subject matter, the fact that we're in an election year, threats from Donald Trump's legal team. The film was able to latch on eventually with Briarcliff Entertainment and got a small release in the US and hasn't really caught too much traction. Nonetheless, it is available to be seen. And it's the first film from Ali Abbasi since his film Holy Spider came out a few years ago, which notably made the Best International Feature Film shortlist that year, but wasn't nominated. And The Apprentice sets us in the late 70s as Donald Trump is seeking to establish himself in the New York real estate world, at that time still just a Nepo baby, living under his real estate owning father, and not yet the incredibly famous and, of course, incredibly destructive person we know today. And the film, takes off and begins really when Donald Trump encounters Jeremy Strong's Roy Cohn character, obviously the very famous and notorious prosecutor and lawyer, and Cohn takes Trump under his wing and melds him, molds him into the villain we know today. And that's really the basis of the film as we go from the late 70s and progress to the late 80s or so. That's the time frame we're in. Obviously, there's many aspects of Trump's life not included in the movie. Unsurprisingly, it just wouldn't be able to really work, I think, as a film if you tried to Wikipedia everything. But it's an interesting film, obviously, because it's portraying one of the most vile and terrible people in American culture, most controversial leader in hundreds of years at least. It's funny because I think Sebastian Stan does a great job in the role, honestly, especially in the beginning of the movie when it's Trump still kind of yearning and longing to become someone. And then eventually the caricature, you could say, the impression nature of his performance becomes incredibly recognizable as he gets closer and closer to the snake oil salesman bullshitter that we know today. Overall, I think The Apprentice is pretty successful as a film purely. Jeremy Strong is the biggest highlight of the movie as Cohn, and frankly, it would have been even stronger of an effort, I think, if Cohn was more involved in the story. Of course, he eventually gets sidelined during Trump's rise, and then he himself, of course, gets sick and dies of AIDS, in the 80s. And watching Trump ultimately cast Cohn aside and take credit for the lessons and wisdom he bestowed on him in terms of being a corrupt power broker and seizing power at the expense of everyone you meet, that somehow is able to engender a bit of sympathy for Cohn on the part of the viewer, even though he himself, of course, is another vile figure in American history. I think it's a really fascinating movie, to be honest, because it's funny to reflect on a lot of like the consultation about this movie when it was coming out. And it's like the timing of it, right? Or an election year, the timing. And yet it's not a favorable Trump portrayal at all because it's an objective one and it portrays him as the piece of shit that he is. And it makes sense that the Trump team wanted to sue and prevent this movie from coming into existence. And some of the financiers, like former Washington Commanders owner Dan Snyder, divested themselves when they realized it wasn't a positive portrayal. But like, it's just honest, right? You see the rape of his first wife, Ivana Trump, in this movie, and it's almost like numbing to watch because you know it's coming, and yet you know to expect it from him, of course. Maria Bakalova, pretty good as Ivana Trump, all things considered. Honestly, a limited amount of things to do in the movie. Ultimately, I think the movie would have been nice if we could have had more time with Fred Jr., Donald's brother, who of course dies of alcoholism related complications during the course of this film, and that relationship isn't really portrayed with too much depth. I think that's something that the public is a little bit less knowledgeable of. I certainly didn't know too much about it as someone who, that's obviously before my time when all that took place. As I said, I think the Stan performance starts out quite strong. Eventually, it just becomes like pure mimicry, but it is pretty good mimicry. The mannerisms, the vocal tics, the manner of speaking, it's all quite familiar by the end. Jeremy Strong, though, as we know, is just a tantalizing performer, and he's immediately, grabbing the screen as Roy Cohn, the way he is able to carry the stature and be really wide-eyed and yet speak in a really distinct manner as well. It's memorable. Martin Donovan doesn't have a lot to do as Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father, although he's pretty unrecognizable in the part, honestly. And yeah, I think ultimately the movie is pretty conventional at the end of the day. Certainly an interesting thing to come into being just because you think of like politically charged films, right? The ones that do exist, a lot of times they're right wing funded. Daily Wire makes movies and stuff like that. Those are movies that don't get big releases. They have a really small capped audience in terms of coming to be. We're long gone are the days of like Michael Moore's very politically focused style of documentary filmmaking. That's not really around either. And The Apprentice, which is a movie that was actually in development during starting back in like Trump's first term, took a long road to the screen here. the fact that it's coming on the eve of a potential Trump second term, it's curious timing just because it feels like it's not telling us anything we don't already know. I think to some people that might be a big demerit. To me, I think I enjoyed the movie. It has a pretty good pace for the most part, and I think the two central performances and Bakalova as well are strong enough to keep you entertained. And I think my any potential reservation I might have had, I didn't really have any, but any potential reservation you might have had about its portrayal of Trump and the brief humanization of him in his early years, that all subsides pretty quickly as a reality sets in, as we know. But yeah, The Apprentice. Let me know, what did you think of it as a movie? What did you think of the timing of this film? A lot of angles to approach the movie with. What did you think? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, Welcome Back Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of We Live in Time, the new romantic drama film starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. This is the latest film from Irish director John Crowley. His previous film, the Goldfinch adaptation, we don't have to talk about. But before that, he made a similar-ish movie to We Live in Time, of course, Brooklyn, starring Saoirse Ronan and Emery Cohen. We Live in Time premiered earlier this year at Toronto and is now in release from A24, a moderate release that's slowly expanding. We Live in Time is a successful romantic drama film due to the immense palpable chemistry between its two stars, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. Garfield, unsurprisingly, is good at portraying a sensitive man, but Pugh gets to show so many sides of herself with a performance that changes as her character does throughout the story. And notably, We Live in Time, the structure of We Live in Time is pretty notable because this movie is very distinctly non-linear. We're spending tons of time with this relationship, of course, across the timeline. We learn about bad things, we see the meet cute, we see the good, the bad. It's out of order intentionally, and I think in the beginning of the movie, it might be a little hard to understand exactly where you are, but the structure becomes a bit more straightforward as we find the present-day plot line. If the acting performances weren't as strong as they are and the chemistry wasn't so evident, I don't think this movie's structure would allow it to succeed. However, I think the overall sentiment and statement that the movie's trying to make about relationships is definitely hammered home, perhaps a bit overtly, a bit obviously, by this structure. Garfield's character, Tobias, is a mid-level management character at Weetabix. He's pretty successful, yet a bit forlorn as he's, recognizing his age and the fact that he's still single after getting divorced, namely. And he has a chance meeting with ILLIT, who is this successful, heralded chef character. And they hit it off right away. I think the meet cute scene is really funny because it's kind of out of nowhere. There was actually a lot of laughs in my theater throughout this movie. There was one guy in the theater who was cackling at times. It was a bit over the top, if you ask me, but there are some funny, humorous moments. There's also some very heavy moments with this. And again, we talk about childbirth in this movie and whether they want it or not, and that is a really strong scene. And it's also not really a spoiler to say that they end up having kids, and you know that they have a child before you see the scene about them being completely at odds with that. The movie almost hammers home or colors in some of your feelings about where these characters stand. I think the overall take of what you want to leave behind and what you want to be remembered for in life and afterlife is pretty resonant. I think it was a pretty successfully emotional conclusion to the movie, but more than anything, I think it's definitely just really worth it for it being a two-hander star vehicle, honestly. Good sex scenes as well. I think it would be foolish for this movie not to include something like that with these two incredibly beautiful people at its lead. Garfield very much is in line with expectations. We know he can do this kind of performance quite well. It's not that far off from his version of Peter Parker in No Way Home, for example, right? He's pretty good at wearing his heart on his sleeve in a genuine way. But Florence, as we've known, has been, one of the signature actors the last, 6-7 years at this point. And unlike Don't Worry, Darling, this is a movie that does come together and does have a compelling romance in its core. And Pugh continues to just make great choices and work with great talents and take on good projects. And for the most part, I think everything her and Garfield are attaching themselves to is working. Pugh has said that she wants to work a little bit less in the short term because she's just been so busy, so balls to the wall, unsurprisingly, the last handful of years. So this is a good one, I think, to leave us with for some time. And of course, Marvel's Thunderbolts is coming out next year, so she'll still be in our lives. But yeah, I think this is definitely up there for the filmography of both of these actors, to be honest. I think it's quite successful, quite moving, and a nice comeback film for Crowley as well. Let me know, though, what did you think of We Live in Time? What was your favorite aspect of the movie? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do for the pod this week. Next week, we have a lot of big stuff to discuss. Once again, 3 significant movies: Venom 3, Venom the Last Dance, Conclave, and Sean Baker's Anora. New music from Soccer Mommy and Halsey and Tyler, the Creator. Very exciting. And I'm going to try and get to Pachinko Season 2, which I'm behind on as well. So make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod, see links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist linked below. Let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.